So, firstly, thank you very much, Alex, for giving me opportunity to interview you for my YouTube channel and podcast.
Well, thank you for having me. Actually, sorry I'm late, but I got caught up in a meeting and didn't know how to get out of it. But yeah, thanks for having me.
So, I thought to introduce you to my audience and tell the work that you are doing to my audience. Can you please introduce yourself?
Sure. So yeah, my name is Alex. I am originally from the UK, but I'm living in Thailand at the moment. I'm an iOS developer. Actually started just about 3 weeks ago. My first job as an iOS developer, and still working remotely. And yeah, I mean, I started developing, well, my whole journey as a developer started less than a year ago. I actually wrote my first lines of code, I think it was December of last year. I did one of the, actually started off with JavaScript. I did one of the courses on Udemy, started with JavaScript. And I don't know, I didn't really love it that much. And then I decided to try out building apps. So I started learning Swift. And yeah, that seemed to work much better than JavaScript for me.
So,
So that
what
is
is your educational background? You have tech background?
no, not at all. Like as I mentioned, I never wrote any code before last year. Coding, I mean, I've always been really interested and passionate about technology, but I've never studied computer programming or computer science or anything like that. And in fact, it was one of those things where I always used to think it would be really cool to be a developer, a programmer, but I always used to think it's not for me. Because when I was in school, I was really bad at math. And for some reason, I had this idea that you got to be good at math and logic to be a good developer. But then a friend of mine in South Korea a few years ago, I think it was like 2.5 years ago, told me that she started learning coding, and she also had no background in programming. So I thought, well, let me give it a try as well and see how I get on. But yeah, definitely no professional background or no academic background in programming.
So, how much time you took to understand the terminology of
So it took me, I can't even begin to think and process how many hours I put into it. It was a very slow start. As I said, I started with JavaScript, and at first, I would say that probably I did JavaScript for about a month, and I was doing maybe on average 2 or 3 hours a day of the course. But those 2 or 3 hours, I might have watched the same tutorial twice or three times. Like I was really trying to make sure I'm taking notes and really trying to make sure I was actually understanding it. I think maybe for the first 2 or 3 weeks of doing it for 2 or 3 hours a day, I still didn't really understand what I was doing. Then after a while, maybe on the third week, I started to get a general understanding of what the code was actually doing. What does a function do? What does it mean to return something from a function? But once I started to understand that, and I realized that with JavaScript, it's only like one piece of the puzzle. You still need a graphical element to actually see what you're doing. And that's what kind of put me off a little bit, because I realized JavaScript on its own is either not enough, or it would take a lot of time and work to actually create a final product. So that's when I switched over to Swift and app development, because I thought if I'm going to learn something from scratch, I'd rather it be something where I can create a product from start to finish, just using one language and all, you know, in a kind of more seamless way. So when I started learning Swift, I would say the beginning was relatively easy because a lot of the things from JavaScript, I mean, the logic side is similar in programming in general. So understanding what a function does, what a variable is, what a constant is. But then when I started getting into more advanced programming, I would say I probably spent 3 months stuck in tutorial hell of just watching tutorials, copying what the tutor was doing. I'm probably on my 4th month of Swift, and when I started building my own little projects, that's when I started to understand actually how it works at a low level with the code. But it was still it was very difficult, and actually what I noticed is the teacher made a huge difference, at least for me. I started Swift with one of the popular Udemy courses, and the teacher was quite good, but I didn't really love her teaching style. And I also used to think that sometimes the way she explained things just didn't make much sense. Like it took her too long to explain simple things, and then more complicated things she just went over very, very quickly. So I was often rewatching the same videos over and over again. So what I started doing and what really worked well for me was I found some other courses from different teachers, but I started from scratch. So even though I'd been programming for 3 or 4 months at that point, I still started from the very beginning just to go over the basics from a new point of view with a new teacher. And doing that 2 or 3 times with 2 or 3 different courses, that's when I really started to think, okay, I actually understand how this works now. So overall, to answer your question shortly, more briefly, from when I started learning Swift to where I thought I actually understand this, probably 4 to 5 months.
So, what is iOS development?
iOS development, what it is?
Yeah,
What
yeah.
is it? Well, it's basically it's basically creating apps. Now, there's different languages that you could use to build apps for iOS, but I chose to go native. So I only learned Swift. Swift, a little bit of Objective-C. But I know there's other ways, but I just went with the native language. And what is iOS development? It's basically this idea of creating, from my point of view, it's the idea of creating a product that then you can either use to monetize or you can sell it on the App Store. And you basically can transform an app idea into a business. And the advantage of programming for iOS as opposed to Android is that there are fewer devices, I would say, and the whole Apple ecosystem, at least for me, is much simpler. And also I use Apple products, and I have for a very long time, so it just made sense for me to get into iOS rather than Android.
So, what are the applications that you worked on?
Well, I mean, to be honest with you, while I was learning, I had many app ideas, but I always got started and never finished them. And I think this is something that a lot of developers can relate to. So I would get on with the design, have an idea in my mind of what the app should look like, but I never completed the apps because I always used to think my app ideas were always quite simple or too complicated. So I thought the simple apps, there's no point in finishing them to put them on the App Store because they're too simple. There's already a million apps that do exactly the same thing. And the really complicated ones, to be honest, I think I just lacked a bit of motivation. When it started to get really difficult, I thought, I mean, do I really want to do this? So what I did instead, when I realized I didn't want to release any of my own apps on the App Store, because when I started programming, the idea was always I want to find a job. It was never I want to be an indie developer. I always thought I want to, I want a job. So what I did instead is I focused on some core technologies or on apps where I could showcase what I could do or how the language works for recruiters. And I built small apps that focused only on showing that. And then I put them on GitHub. So in total, I think I have about maybe 15 or 20 projects on GitHub. And what I did then was on my CV, I put links to all of the different projects and a quick overview of what technologies I used, what problems do they solve, so that the interviewer, the recruiters could get an idea of what I can do without having actual apps on the App Store, basically. But now, like the job I have now, I'm actually not developing for iOS, it's for Mac, but similar, it's the same principle, same language. And it's a medical software.
So you did your own project. So you have used so many technologies for it. You have used so many tools for it. So what is your favorite project and why you like it so much? And what are the tools that you use? And why? What is the main reason that attracted you?
So my favorite project. Yeah, that's a good question. And actually, I don't even remember. The last time I worked on my own projects was probably a couple of months ago. I started building a social media app, which the UI is basically a clone of Instagram. But the idea of this app was to, so the target audience would have been artists. So musicians, dancers, painters, writers, anybody who is really into creating any form of art. And it was meant to be a platform for them to share their work, whether it was audio, if it's a musician, or videos, photos, kind of like Instagram, basically. It's like a clone of Instagram, but without ads, without any kind of algorithms trying to push certain things instead of others. So it was almost like how Instagram used to be. Now, I don't know how old you are. I don't know if you remember Instagram pre-Facebook. It used to, like before Facebook bought Instagram, it used to be a very different app. The timeline was in an order that actually made sense. So my idea was I want to create a social media platform for artists where people can publish their work without having to worry about the algorithm, using specific keywords, kind of making it easier for artists to share their work, basically. And the reason why it was my favorite is because I thought this is something I would want to use myself. So I was mainly thinking, I am also the target audience of this, so I have the opportunity to, make something that I would enjoy using. And also because it was very complicated to build. There were so many different elements in the UI, even creating my own camera module so that the user could take pictures or shoot videos from within the app and then import them. So there were lots of things. I didn't actually finish the app, but there were many things where there were many times when I thought I could actually release this. Like I thought this could actually work. So yeah, that was probably my favorite one that I worked on.
So you said about the functionalities. So what is the inspiration behind this? Why you wanted to do this?
Well, it's like, as I said, I wanted to make a social media platform for people who just want to share their art. Because I think the problem now, for example, for me, I'm a musician as well. I'm not professionally, but like I used to share a lot of my music on YouTube and Instagram. But when I open Instagram nowadays, it just feels like teenagers. I don't know. It doesn't want to make me share anything. I feel like it's complete. Like, I don't feel like I'm the target audience for Instagram anymore. But because it is so popular, I kind of still use it. So yeah, my inspiration was just create a platform for people who are not interested in anything else other than art, and that's all you find on this app.
So you don't have tech background, but you entered into iOS development. You understood the mechanism of the software, and you know what exactly to put in order to get a particular output.
Yeah, I know where to look for.
So what kind of thinking that you used to have in order to what made you to connect with this only this because you have different platforms, right? Not only iOS, you can also
Mhm.
build up apps on Android, and you can also build apps on different platforms. But why this? Is this because your sensibility have connected with this? Because you have that logical. Everything is logical, of course. Programming is logical, but why only iOS?
Um, I've mostly it's just because I use Apple products. So for me, it made sense. Like I've always used iPhone for, well, basically since it came out, and I've only been using Macs and iPads. Like I'm fully in the Apple ecosystem. So for me, it was never a question of I will go and develop for Android because I thought that's a world I know nothing about, and I'm already starting in something I know nothing about. I don't want to have two things that are completely new for me. So for me, it just made sense. I'm so familiar with Apple products and apps and the way they feel and the way they look, um, that it just made sense for me to get into iOS development rather than Android. Yeah, I never considered Android, to be honest.
So I personally am a software engineer. I did masters in software engineering, and I have graduation in computer science and engineering. So I did projects for my degree and for my two degrees, web applications. So without having any tech background, you entered into this and you learned it very fast. 1 year is very quick to understand. Without having any tech background, that's we have like what exactly happens in our graduation that teaches what exactly what. So but it's 1 year is very less time. It's you're very quick in understanding and learning, and you already got a opportunity to work in a company. That's an amazing thing. It shows how much interest and the passion that you have towards the subject. So these many projects. So how you did in this small time without? Do you have you trained anywhere or you trained your mind?
It was so basically, um, I think the way, because I also thought I haven't been studying long enough to get a job. And for many months when I was learning, I never felt like I could do this professionally because I was always watching tutorials, researching stuff online. I had no idea what a professional environment would look like in the development world. What changed was um, basically my idea was this. I decided I'm going to dedicate 1 year to learning. I already had a job before this, not related to programming. But when I started, I thought I'm going to learn for a year and then I'm going to start applying for jobs so that I can make this career change. The training the mind, that's an interesting thing because I used to be an English teacher for an online school in China, and I'd been working there for a few years. And that was the hardest thing. Like for me, the hardest thing wasn't learning the language or remembering things because I could just write them down and then always reference back to my notes. The hardest thing was training my mind to think in that way. Because if you've never programmed before, your brain just doesn't even know where to start. It's like a completely rewiring of the way I thought. And it was very difficult for me to do when I was also working, because I was spending about 3 to 4 hours a day in the morning learning programming. And then I was doing my teaching for 6 hours. And I was switching between logical thinking and then into teacher mode. And it was very difficult. I always felt this big gap between how I think normally and how I need to think to be a programmer. What changed was in July, for various reasons, I decided to quit my job as a teacher. And I mean, I live in Thailand, so it's a pretty cheap country compared to Western countries. And I had enough savings, and I decided instead of jumping into another job, I'm going to dedicate 10 hours a day to learning programming, and I'm going to do nothing else. So as soon as I left my job in July, that's pretty much what I did for about 3 months. I was just spending 10 to 12 hours a day only programming, watching tutorials, jumping around, building small projects, but just 100% of my day was all about programming. And it was awful. After a while, I really burnt out. But that's when I started to think like a programmer, because the whole day, even when I wasn't writing code, I was still thinking about how can I solve this problem. And that's when I realized, okay, now I'm actually thinking in that logical way. So as long as I keep improving it, I've already retrained my brain to think in that way. But if I hadn't quit my job, I'm sure I wouldn't be at a point where I could be good enough to get a job. I just, yeah, doing it for 10 to 12 hours a day is what really made the difference to me.
So, what is the first point that you learned when you started learning programming? What is the first point when you understood that I'm understanding something?
When It's when I started making my own projects, even when they were very small and very simple. And I think one thing that puts many people off with building their own project, because I know I'm maybe not so much anymore, but I used to be quite active on Twitter and the whole tech Twitter community. I think what puts a lot of people off is we are all very good at following tutorials. And we can do some quite complicated things when we are watching tutorials, but then if we want to make our own project, we could never make something anywhere close as good as what we did in the tutorials. And we think, oh, it means I don't understand anything. Because we don't even want to try and build something super simple because we are used to making more complex things in tutorials. And I fell into that trap many times. I was watching tutorials, I was building these complex apps. I understood what I was doing, but I wasn't able to recreate it myself. I was basically just copying code from everywhere. But then what I started doing was there's a website where there's a bunch of free APIs that you can use. And I started going through these APIs. And there's, for example, APIs to get pictures from Mars, APIs for the weather, APIs to generate random quotes. There's like loads of different APIs. So I started going through the list, and every time I found an API that sounded interesting, I would build an app on that API. So for a long time, all I was doing was every day choose an API, build an app, and that was it. And even though at the time it felt very repetitive, because at the end all I was doing was creating a JSON file to making a network call, collecting the data from the API, and then displaying it in some form of UI. But the more I did it, the easier it became and then I could start implementing little things. Like I could, okay, let me put a button here to refresh the API and make a new network call. Let me try making this in Swift UI. Let me try making this in UIKit using different frameworks. So even though I was always building very small projects, they were always my own. And I wasn't using any tutorials. And that's when I realized, okay, I can actually do this. All I need to do now is get better at it. But it has to be in small steps. I think that the transition between tutorials and your own projects is huge. It's a very, very big step. It's almost like restarting again.
So how much you understood about iOS?
Um, well, I mean, now I think I understand it quite well. Um, it took me a while, especially because like there's two frameworks. Well, there's more than two, but like the two main frameworks, let's say, would be UIKit and Swift UI. And I started with UIKit, and I think the thing that took me the longest to understand was probably the whole like delegate and protocol pattern, and setting that up. Like Swift UI is much easier. Um, but now I'm doing it every day, and everything I do, like even when it's difficult, I still understand what's going on. So I mean, at this point, I think I can say that I understand how the Swift language works and how iOS programming works. But it did take me many months to get to a point where I could say that.
So you learned software. You learned building software or understanding software for the devices which are the top devices in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So how is the feeling?
Um, well, I don't know. I've never really thought about it that way. Um, to me, it's not, again, it's not the reason why I did. Like, I didn't do it because I thought I want to build for Apple. Like, I want to be in the, like, elite side of things. It was just, I don't know anything about Android. I already have the devices so I can test the apps. Um, and also, to be honest, it's from the research I did, iOS developers are more in demand and just paid better. So I thought, if I'm going to start learning something from scratch, I want to put myself in the position to be hired as quickly as possible and to make as much money as possible. Because at the end of the day, it is a job, right? So it was that. But I never really thought about the fact that it was like for the elite devices, because at the end of the day, there are more Android phones out there than iOS phones, and there are some really expensive Android phones as well. Um, I think for me, the thing that made it a bit easier also to make this choice, although it was a very easy choice, because Apple is a very closed system, I imagined it would be easier to learn. I don't know what Android is like, but I'm sure that Apple has a lot of restrictions. Um, And I think when someone is starting out, restrictions are good. If you can do too many things, it might be easy to get lost. Um, so knowing how Apple operates, I thought, well, maybe their programming environment is also a bit of a bit of a safeguard and sandbox environment to try things without bricking your device or anything like this.
So how your previous job experience, you as a English teacher, online English teacher, that job experience helped you, that knowledge helped you in improving your technical skills, your programming skills.
It helped massively, because I was teaching myself. I I was applying the same techniques that I applied to my students on myself. So note taking, making sure I really understood something at its core, not just kind of understood it, but like really, really understood it. So a lot of repetition. And as I said earlier, that's why I watched different tutorials from different teachers from the beginning every single time. Because I could always find things that I maybe didn't learn the first time or couldn't remember well. Lots of note taking. And yeah, I mean, the thing is, when you're this idea of learning by yourself, I know a lot of people think, yeah, there's a lot of material out there. Anyone can learn anything from the internet, and it is true, but you've got to know how to teach yourself. Because at the end of the day, you're watching a video, and you need to understand where your own limits are. Like, you need to know the difference between memorizing something and understanding something. Because if all you're doing is memorizing, it's not going to work, right? You need to make sure you actually understand first. Memorization, I don't think is that useful anyway, but it's more, do you understand the logic? Like, do you understand why it works? Also, do you understand why it doesn't work? Which is what happens most of the time. So yeah, I think having worked as a teacher for many years definitely helped.
So you entered into iOS. So have you ever thought how this Steve Jobs worked on this to make this very big on this planet?
Um, to be honest, like, it's not my first time. Um, I've never really thought about that, but it's not my first time working within Apple. Like, the whole Apple ecosystem is something I am so used to that I give it for granted. Many years ago, when I used to use PCs and Windows when I was a kid, and then I got my first MacBook, I don't know, maybe 12, 13 years ago. But it was only because I needed a software called Logic Pro for music, which I couldn't get on Windows. So that's when I started using Mac. But before that, I never even really cared about Apple. Like, at least in Europe, and back in the day, I mean, 13 years ago, we're talking about pre-iPhone, I think, or almost brand new. So Apple wasn't the company it is today. It was still kind of niche, at least in Europe. So I only got Apple because I needed specific software. And then Apple grew to be this huge company that it is today. Um, but yeah, I've never really overthought. Like, for me, the Apple thing, it's just a device. Like, it just happens to be that I learned to develop for that platform. But again, it is only because that's what I use. If I was using Windows and Android, I probably wouldn't be developing for iOS right now.
So do you know why it is standing apart from all other softwares?
Sorry, I didn't hear that.
Do you know why iOS is standing apart from all other softwares? What is the speciality that you understood? That the point that comes to you, why the performance is very good? You created user interface. You worked on functionalities. You worked on server. You worked on connectivity. So why it is so powerful and very easy to for a user to operate it, or to for application to reach uh, many people, I mean expensive people in the world.
Yeah, I think there's different sides to this. One side is apps need to meet certain criteria to be on the App Store. It's not like with Android, where, at least from what I know of Android, you can make any app and have it on a phone. Whether it's on the Play Store or whether you download it from the browser, you can have any app, as far as I understand. I think also the fact that the Swift language is being constantly updated and optimized by Apple to be as efficient as possible, using the hardware as best as possible. I mean, don't forget, there aren't many iPhones out there. I mean, I don't know what there is now, but there's maybe like 3 or 4 iPhones still in production. Pretty much all of them running the same software, iOS 15 or, yeah, iOS 15. So when you build a UI, it's very easy to test it on the different screen sizes. Whereas with Android, there are so many variables when it comes to CPU power, RAM, storage, screen size and resolution, the ratio of the screen. Like there's so many variables that they obviously compromise. I think at the end they will compromise the quality of the app. Also the camera modules. Like there are so many different camera modules on Android, whereas with iPhone, there's just like a couple. So I think it's that, like iOS is limited, like everything within Apple is limited, but within those limits, it's really good. So from my point of view, I would rather work with limitations, but knowing that when it works really well, rather than knowing I can do a bit of everything, but I have no guidelines as to what this should look like or stuff like that. But the whole Swift language is obviously optimized to run on Apple hardware, which I think makes it a bit easier as well.
So last question is, what do you say to the people, to the iOS developers, people who are working for Apple devices? They can be beginner level or intermediate level or expert level. The points that came into your mind when you're working on it, when you're building stuff, so that it may be useful for them, that connected, that made you think, that maybe that they may not think, or that they need to put in their mind in order to learn it in a better way, faster, or understand it better.
Yeah, I mean the learn it faster. So the first thing I would say is don't compare yourself to others. Like some people take a year, some people take 5 years. It doesn't, it all depends on how much time can you dedicate to this. How committed are you? How used to learning are you as well? Because like a lot of people maybe get into programming, but the last time they learned a new skill was maybe years ago. And it is a difficult skill to learn. It's not something that you can just jump into from nothing and pick up straight away. It might take many tries, many different teachers, try different languages. Like for me, for example, I started this because I wanted to make a career change. It wasn't because I loved coding, I loved computers, and that's what I wanted to do. It's just it suited my lifestyle, and I thought this is the next step in my career. I want to stop teaching and go into something like this. So it was a very pragmatic choice. It wasn't driven by passion or anything like this. But I think like with everything, the more you do it, the better you get. And when you get good at something, that's when you start to enjoy it. But it does take quite a long time to get to the point where it's fun and enjoyable. Since July, when I started spending 12 hours a day coding, at one point I completely burnt out. I couldn't even open Xcode anymore. I was just like, I'm done with this. It's not for me. And then I started applying for jobs, I think at the beginning of October. And I was getting rejected everywhere. I think I did maybe a couple of interviews, but I had no work experience at all. And everywhere I looked, it seemed as though they were looking for people with years of experience, mid-senior level. Like it was really difficult to find jobs that openly said they're looking for junior developers. So I was just applying for everything because I thought, you know what, like I will let them say no to me rather than me just give up without even trying. So I just applied to a bunch of jobs. In a month, just got rejected all the time. And at one point, I think towards the end of October or beginning of November, I thought I'm just gonna give up the idea of becoming a developer. I thought this isn't for me. It's not something I enjoy. I spend a lot of time doing it. It's just too difficult to get a job. That's what I thought. And then I stopped programming for about a month towards the end of September, and I was quite happy not programming anymore. And then about a month ago, I thought, you know what, let me just try one more time to apply for jobs. And I went online and I read a few different blog posts on how to write a CV as someone who is looking for their first job. Because I think that's very important. Like when you're writing your CV, even if you've had 15 other jobs, if they are not related to programming, it doesn't really matter. Nobody cares that you used to work at the supermarket or as an English teacher or anything like this. They want to know what have you built. So what I did is what I told you at the beginning. Instead of, I opened my CV with just like a quick overview of who I am and basically that. There's just a few paragraphs about that. And then I just put 15 projects, links to GitHub, core technologies used, so that at a first glance, the recruiter could see that and not, oh, this person has no work experience. So I rewrote my CV in this way, and then I went onto LinkedIn, and I just set my filters to, LinkedIn, you can do like easy apply, so you don't have to register on other websites. So I just put my filters to everywhere in the European Union where you could work remotely and with the easy apply. And I just went through every single job, didn't even read it, just applied to every single job, 10 pages of jobs. And I did this on a Monday morning or Monday afternoon. And within a few hours, I started getting a few emails saying, we're really sorry, unfortunately, blah, blah, blah. I got a few emails saying, asking me to schedule an interview. And then in the evening, I got this email from this company, the company where I work now, asking me if I would be free the next day to have an interview. And I was out with a friend, and I thought, yeah, sure, I'll be at home tomorrow. So I did this interview, and to be honest with you, like the first impact was, this is too difficult, because they told me you would be we're looking for a Mac developer. And already I thought, I've never even seen what it looks like to develop for Mac. I've always done iOS. And also there were just some things where I thought, this is not what I learned. So I felt really uncomfortable with the idea of taking the job, also because it was like a medical company. So I thought, I don't know, it doesn't sound like something for me. So I did the interview, and the next day, the HR person sent me an email saying, look, we would like to schedule a second interview with one of our senior developers to have like a technical person on the call to ask you some questions. So I was really nervous because I had no idea what kind of questions I would get asked, because at that point I'd only done tutorials and little projects. I had no idea what like a real working environment was like. So the interview lasted about an hour. And I was quite surprised because even though up until that point, I thought, I hate this, I don't understand it, this is not for me, everyone else is so much better than I am, I give up. When the senior developer asked me the questions, even though I would not be able to sit down and write good code to solve that problem, I knew the logic on how to solve that problem. And that gave me a huge confidence boost. Like when I realized, here's a senior developer asking me questions that I know how to answer. Even if the answer is not perfect, I understand the question. And even though maybe I can't go and write the code right now, I've done it before. Like the things he's asking me, I've seen. I have them in my files. I can go and reference back. I know how it works. So yeah, I did that interview, and a couple of hours later they called, offered me the job, and that was a Friday night, and started on Monday a month ago, and it's been amazing. It's been, honestly, from the first few days, it was still really difficult. Like even just opening a project the size of the one we're working on, it was really daunting. But then you realize everyone out there, even if they are senior developers, they just have more experience. We are all struggling with something. Like what they are doing, they are going at the same speed as we are with our easier tasks. So like this whole idea of programmers who just sit down and type away for 12 hours, it just doesn't exist. It's like a constant research, understanding what you're doing before you do it, understand why something doesn't work, being able to fix the problem, find a solution, knowing where to go to find a solution. And I have zero background, terrible at math. My logic thinking is good, but when I was at school, it was terrible. So like solving problems for like math or algebra problems, I was the worst. So I always grew up with this idea, I'm bad at this. But I still thought I'm gonna try it anyway. I just want to see what it's like. So my advice is to anyone out there looking for a job or thinking that they're not good enough or that they're thinking of giving up is just keep going. Everybody feels like this at some point, that this is not for me. I mean, there are days when I still think that this is not for me, but then you just have to accept it's part of the job. There's always going to be days where you feel good about it, days when you feel bad about it. You're going to go to bed without having solved bugs, and you're going to have nightmares, and then there's going to be days where everything feels easy and it's going to be a good day. Just keep going. I think the biggest misconception on programming is it's for some people and not for others. And what I've seen is it's just a skill like anything else. The longer you spend on it, as long as you're motivated and as long as you actually spend, because it's not just about how long you spend on it, it's making sure that you're spending quality time. Like if you're spending 10 hours a day and all you're doing is copying stuff from a tutorial without understanding it, that is 10 hours wasted, basically. It's making sure that don't think about how long it's taking. Just go in small steps and move on only when you think, okay, I've understood this. You don't need to remember it. You don't need to know how to sit down and write a whole app by yourself. Just make sure you understand it, build small apps so you have code to reference if you need to in the future. And yeah, just get rid of this idea of it isn't for me, because I think if you've got beyond the point, if you've been doing it for a few months and you're still doing it, it is for you. Because if you're going to give up, if it's not for you, you'll give up straight away. I think that's my advice. So just keep going, because at the end, it is just a job and it is just a skill. Don't get too emotional about it. Keep learning. When the time is right, it'll work out. Sorry that for a very long
So
answer.
it is very inspiring. You are inspiration for a lot of people who wants to come into the tech world and who wants to understand, who wants to learn technology and wants to be part of it. Um, um, uh, People who are already into tech, it may help them in understanding it better, faster. But actually, you took it to the next level, having no idea about what exactly it is. It is your own interest and it is own your passion and your own time, and you are driving your own car and you reached where you want to reach. So it's really amazing, and thanks for telling for the entire process, how you started and how you got the success. So
Yeah, sure. It's, you know what it is. There's a lot of tutorials out there. I think the thing that helped me the most was not so much learning programming, but finding a path to get employed. Because I think that's where there isn't that much information out there. You know, everybody can do the tutorials, but then when it comes to actually getting a job, I think that like the most important thing is not how good are you as a developer. Because if you are looking for your first job, you're not going to be good, right? They don't expect you to be good at it immediately. The most important thing is how good are you at learning? Like how quick can you look at the problem and think of how you might solve it? How are you going to try it out to see if it works? How will you know if it works? I think those are the things that made the difference and that make the difference when looking for the first job. Because looking for the first job is the hardest thing because you've got no experience. Getting an interview is even already a bit of a miracle in itself. Getting a second interview is almost impossible. It feels almost impossible. But it's just that you have no work experience to show, so don't focus on that. But also keep in mind, if they are hiring a junior developer, they know. Because basically most developers will be self-taught. Because yeah, I mean, it depends what kind of development you do. But at least from my experience, like iOS developers mostly are self-taught. Also because it's a language that's like it's constantly being updated, and as a developer, you know, like you always have to keep it up to date. You're always learning new stuff every day. So yeah, I think it's just focus and show your confidence in the fact that you've taught yourself. So just like you've taught yourself all of the things necessary to get that first interview, you can continue teaching yourself everything you need to be good at the job if you get it.
So, if you want me to put your web links, it can be GitHub or GitLab or whatever the LinkedIn or your website, your Twitter. I'll put in the description of this video. People uh, who who wants to connect with you can connect with you and can see the work that you're doing.
Sure, sure. I mean, I'm not really putting anything on GitHub anymore, but my Twitter account, yeah, for sure. If anybody wants to drop me a message or connect, I'll be very happy to.
So, at last, what do you say about my questioning in this conversation?
Oh, it was really good. For me, it's the first time getting asked these kinds of questions. Although, because you got in touch because of the tweet I sent out about a month ago, which kind of went a bit viral, and I got hundreds of comments and messages, and everybody was asking me the same question of how did you do it? How did you get a job after only 10 months? But I think that's only one side. That's only one side. It's not how did I get the job after 10 months, it's how do you build that confidence step by step to eventually put yourself into an interview. There's no secret to getting a job. It's just very, very small steps, one at a time. So it was interesting when you asked me those questions because you made me even question some of my own choices, like some of the things that I just took for granted or didn't even really think about when starting out, like why did I choose iOS or stuff like this. It was kind of interesting for me to go back, although it's not that long ago. And yeah, it helped me to rebuild this journey. And also, one last thing I want to say is the journey itself, especially towards the end, when you start applying for jobs, that is the hardest part. Because when you've spent a lot of time and possibly even money on tutorials, and you put yourself out there looking for a job, and you get constant rejections, that is the hardest part. Because it just destroys your confidence and it makes you feel like, okay, I give up. So to anybody out there, I say that is where you need Toughen up, because that is the hardest part. Like the end of it is not fun, but when you do eventually get the job, it will all be worth it. And it's actually easier. Like when you have a job, you have just one thing to work on and a direction. It's actually much easier. I think that stage where you're doing tutorials, you're not really sure what you should do next. It's kind of hard. In a job, I think it's a bit easier.
So, at last, have you seen any videos of mine on YouTube?
I checked very, very briefly the first time you sent me a message, because when we were in touch, I wasn't at home, or I get the tweets and always see them at awkward times, so I'm opening stuff on my phone. But yes, actually, I haven't. I've checked out your channel, but I don't think I've watched. You have some other interviews there, right?
Yeah, I did more than 500 plus interviews of different country people who are into different professions and who are into tech world for like 30 years, 20 years, 25 years,
You've
who
got
are into
500
Apple, who are
videos on
into,
your YouTube channel?
yes.
Wow, okay. Then maybe it wasn't the YouTube channel that they saw. Let me see. I think it was from the website.
You can
All right,
see
well,
Smart Cherry's thoughts on YouTube.
because
Smart Cherry's thoughts.
oh, that's what it is, because you've got multiple, oh, Smart Cherry Thoughts, YouTube. Let me see if
Yeah.
this is what I saw. Oh, wow, you do have a lot. Okay, well, I'm gonna spend some time going through this. This seems really interesting. So do you have any other interviews scheduled this week?
Yeah, a lot. I have videos with CEOs of the startups and people who are into other programming languages also. I want to know how the things are working. Like you people are inspiring, so I want to put you people on the platform and tell the world how your journey went. It may, even if it changes one person's perspective and it helps them in developing their skills and if they grow, that will be great.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, no, I mean, like, thank you very much for having me on. I mean, it's been really enjoyable talking about this with you. Good experience, and I hope it helped
So
someone out there.
100%. So, can I put this video on my YouTube channel with your permission?
Of course, of course. Feel free to put it wherever you like.
Yeah. And also, can I put this audio and video clip on my podcast, website, internet, and the social media everywhere with your permission?
Sure, of course.
Yeah. And thanks, Alex. Keep going, keep doing what you love, and keep inspiring people. And if you want to share anything about the development and about what you learned through my medium, you're always welcome.
Sure. We'll do an update 1 year from now to see how
Yeah.
it was.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you very much, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Have a good night.
Bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.